Well, the gloves are off as Democrats and Republicans face off. This comes on the heels of an 11 News Defenders investigation revealing how thousands of local voters might not get to exercise that right. So are you in for a surprise when you go to vote? Investigative reporter Mark Greenblatt is back tonight, and his investigation, well, it's heating up. So, Mark, is this truly a partisan thing?
Well, Lucy, Greg, both sides are throwing allegations at each other. Stuck in the middle, you, the voter. So tonight, we're digging deeper into claims made by Harris County's Republican voter registrar and local Democrats.
It's the most fundamental of American rights. We, the people, get to vote, to choose who will lead. But now, a mystery. Why are Harris County voters and qualified Americans getting blocked from voting?
So they do everything right.
They do everything right.
But they're still getting rejected.
They're still getting rejected.
Frances Graham convinced 138 citizens to vote for the first time this year, like Ian Meyer, Kathy Sotelo, Donna Wiley, and more than 30 others that Harris County rejected, apparently for mistakes Graham believes they did not make, along with 1 out of 3 voters she registered.
It makes me very angry.
And this elections expert who studied problems in Harris County told us,
this is not 1 or 2 registrations, this is thousands of registrations.
Democrats allege Republicans want to block new registrations because a new voter is more likely to vote Democrat. But Republicans say you've got to get tough on voter registrations in order to prevent voter fraud. But how solid is that claim in Harris County, and should it be used to reject voter registrations here?
I'm not going to disagree with the fact that we had more than 300 ironclad examples of voter fraud.
Paul Bettencourt is the elected Republican tax collector and registrar in Harris County. And what he told us, he'd said before.
We have had a history of illegal voting as well as documented fraud cases in Harris County.
It was all part of his testimony before the House Elections Committee in January.
What I'm providing to you is 381 absolutely verified and documented cases.
It was part of a push to strengthen voter fraud laws.
The 381 cases that we've provided you with this documentation are what we believe are ironclad.
But not everyone agrees.
I would not have gone ahead and said I have ironclad cases.
He's Representative Rafael Anchia, chair of this House hearing on voter fraud, and a Democrat.
When through very little additional investigations, I would have found that the information that I was providing was not 100% accurate.
Anchia points to Bettencourt's own exhibit for that hearing, because out of those 381 ironclad cases of voter fraud, at least 121 of them are still, quote, under investigation. On top of it, only 1 voter fraud suspect has ever been prosecuted among those Harris County brought forward.
Don't you think it's a bit alarmist to call these cases fraud when you only know that 1 case of fraud actually happened?
It's not 1 case. It's 1 person.
You said they were ironclad examples of voter fraud, sir.
Mark, your point, please.
Before you use that word before the State House, do you think you ought to be as careful as you could be?
Mark, we are as careful as we could.
But Anchia is also concerned about other parts of the county's testimony. Bettencourt also claimed that his office discovered 315 non-citizens who had attempted to register to vote. But Anchia says his office easily discovered 34 of those had openly disclosed their status. But the registrar gave them voter cards anyways. There were also supposedly 22 non-citizens who were both able to register and cast ballots. But Anchia found some of them actually were U.S. citizens.
We went ahead and dug a little bit deeper because it just didn't pass the smell test to me.
But Bettencourt says he admitted in advance to making some mistakes.
I think I'm doing my job, sir, because this is what I said in the committee hearing. I didn't go and change my mind. I didn't go in there and say that we didn't have an error. Sir, I said I had 4 errors, and that's on file with the House Elections Committee.
If they have legitimate evidence of voter fraud, then let's fix those problems. Let's not cover them up by coming up with ways to deny legitimate voters the right to vote.
Representative Scott Hochberg is a Democrat and a known critic of Bettencourt, and he says,
I think the attitude in Mr. Bettencourt's office is that when in doubt, reject.
You've seen examples right here in your own district.
Yes, sir.
In this primary.
Yes.
Where people had their right to vote taken away.
Yes, sir.
And he says he found problems where the responsibility lies somewhere between Harris County and the Republican Secretary of State.
We took data from Mr. Bettencourt's office about how many people had been denied for missing certain check boxes that a lot of people commonly missed. The Secretary of State looked at that data and said, wow, we ought to change the form.
And so the state simplified the form, making it easier for applicants to not miss checking required boxes. But there's one problem.
And Mr. Bettencourt's office is not giving those forms out. They're still using the old ones.
What do you think about that?
I think that's insane.
Representative Hochberg has not provided this office with any complaint in writing.
Bettencourt says his office has asked the Secretary of State for the new forms, but still hasn't received them. But also, Hochberg says he's found more than 100 cases like Lorraine Brown Spencer. She applied to vote, but because she wrote her name with a hyphen, it didn't match state driver's license records that don't have the dash. And she was rejected, despite this state advisory that requires Harris County to check for typos.
Why don't you check for typos? Before you send that rejection letter, why don't you check first?
Mark, we do our best.
In fact, Bettencourt does have 2 employees assigned to look for such typos. However, he admits supervisors don't regularly check their work before sending rejection letters to would-be voters. And remember these new voter registration cards we're talking about? Well, the Secretary of State's office tells us tonight that they sent 150,000 of them to Bettencourt's office in mid-August. And they say they have no record of his office requesting more later. Now, the Republican chair of the House Elections Committee, Leo Berman, called to say that he supports Bettencourt's basic idea that voter fraud exists and plans to push for more legislation in the next session to stop it. Now, as for you, well, since last night, we've received email after email. Kelly Bishop wrote in, I saw your story and was both happy and frustrated. I'm happy to know that I'm not the only one dealing with the frustration of a rejected voter registration. Thank you for doing this story. Andy Perez says, I would really like to thank you for your report. I, too, was rejected twice, stating that I didn't include my DL number, my driver's license number, on the form when I know I did. Do you know if you have a story to tell? You can find a link on khou.com and go ahead and email me. I'm Mark Greenblatt, 11 News Defenders.